addition, Councillor Walker. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, thank you very much for presenting. We are moving now to, with some pace actually, isn't it exciting, to making space for water. And so I'll welcome Craig McElroy. Nick Vigor, are you coming? You're welcome to come forward here. No, there's no need to be, just because you're outdressed by your boss doesn't mean to say you can't come to the front. No, we're coming along quite nicely actually, I think. It's, we're getting along nicely, I think. So this item looks at how we progress the Making Space for Water program. It's a significant amount of money, but there isn't any great surprises in this, but I think we do need to take this very seriously. It's been well telegrammed to the public, and it appears to enjoy a good level of support from both the government and ourselves. Mr McElroy, please take the floor and lead us through this.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Sandra, have we got the presentation we can get up? Just going to run through a very quick...
I think it's very important we get the presentation up. The Sandras are working double pace, 2 Sandras at once at pace.
Who would it have come from? Who would have sent it?
Emma. This morning about
bingo.
Okay, just 1 moment. They can start and I'll put it up in a minute.
Coming up now.
cool, thank you very much.
Off you go. Thank you very much for that. Making Space for Water.
Okay.
This is your time.
So just the first slide that I'll be showing you in a second is just the decision timeline, just reminding everyone that we've been before the governing body many times over the last few months, and we committed at the last meeting to report back today. This is really the handover from the governing body through to the LTP process, because this is where the program is going to end up a key conversation within the LTP. And the other thing is there's a real sense of urgency from a Healthy Waters perspective. In order to make this program come live, we've got an enormous amount of work we need to do by 1 July 2024 to hit the ground running. This is proposed to be a 6-year program, and it can't be managed in a linear way where we get to the 1st of July, then we decide what we're going to do. We need to really crack on now, which was why we've set ourselves up with a modest capital budget this year to get cracking on the program. So just wanted to highlight here the benefits associated with particularly focusing on option 3, Making Space for Water. And I know it's a lot of money, and the numbers, by the way, reflect both the council and the Crown contributions. So that's the total investment. What it does exclude is the Cat 3 buyout process, which is managed and funded directly through the Recovery Office. So the main beneficiaries are that there's 1,000 properties that are going to have a reduced flood risk through the blue-green network projects and other physical works. That excludes the 400 properties that we anticipate will be purchased through the voluntary buyout support scheme. So in total there'll be 1,400 properties that will effectively where the flood risk will have been totally removed. There are 700 properties with reduced flood risk through overland flow path management, advice and compliance. There'll be 10,000 households, marae and community organisations that will have flood resilience plans, and 100,000 households directly exposed to flood hazards will be supported in managing their individual flood risk. So those are the direct benefits of the investment. Not only that, there are obviously some very significant indirect benefits. The blue-green networks are going to provide a large increase in green space, a major contribution to climate resilience around large flood event, and with the increased stream and stream corridor works, there'll be a lot of additional biodiversity provided through those solutions, as well as assets that the community can enjoy from a sort of a social and a well-being perspective. Also,
Just what period, over period of time do we spend the 1.003 billion?
This is a six-year investment program. And look, it won't be entirely linear, but we want it to be as linear as it can be. A lot will depend on the take-up around the voluntary buyouts and the ability to move into areas and start the physical works. But obviously the stream resilience work can continue in parallel with that activity. Also, there'll be 50,000 households with improved knowledge about the necessity of the secondary network and the role of overland flow paths on their properties. And the thing I should have said that's implicit in option 2, which carries through to option 3, is the work that we want to do on enhanced maintenance levels of service. And I think one of the most important things we're proposing is the flood intelligence tool, which will give the community real-time information about flood risk. We really want to produce the safe swim equivalent around water quality for flooding, and we think that will be a major step forward. And all Aucklanders will be indirectly exposed to flood hazards can manage their flood risk, because one of the beneficiaries we're going to have around the enhanced maintenance is that we think there will be a significant reduction in urban road and property flooding risk as well. Kia ora. You've seen these before. These are just reminding you of the 4 main project objectives, so I don't think we need to dwell on that.
Can I ask a question as we go?
Of course.
With that additional information, one of the things that I noted in the days I spent out wandering with you and others was that people had inadvertently done things that had made things a lot worse. Solid fences in areas across floodplains which diverted stuff into either theirs or the neighbours' houses. Just dumb stuff that they never thought of. Are we going to have a say in educating people that with a 5-wire fence wouldn't have done anything near the damage, but it might not have kept the neighbour's dog out? But for what they thought were good reasons, they harvested water into their houses. It was just shocking.
So we're going to be treating all of the overland flow paths effectively as stormwater assets. They're going to be given a risk classification, and those high-risk assets that are causing problems at the moment, we'll be working with the compliance team that's been established through regulatory. So we'll be the foot soldiers on the ground identifying the issues. Then the compliance team will come in behind and work with the property owners around rerouting fences, etc. Because as the Mayor quite rightly points out, a lot of the flooding is unintended consequences. I think people putting fences in probably not being aware of the risk in the first place.
Just weren't thinking.
Yeah, and by the way,
it was
these
actually a flood diversion tool. They just saw it as a fence, and I just saw endless dumb stuff.
And the other good thing is with the flood viewer tool that's already publicly accessible, that does identify the overland flow paths already. So I think already we've got a much heightened awareness of flood risk within people who take the time just to put their address in and look at their specific flood risk. So in the blue-green network, we're looking obviously at clusters of category 3 properties, and we've previously identified the maps that show where those likely blue-green networks are going to be located. And our target for this year is to get as many feasibility and concept designs underway so that we can actually hit the ground running for 1 July 2024. In the Stream and Waterway Resilience Program, and that's, I guess, an example on the right of the Te Onga Awa. That's what it looked like before we did the work, that's what it looks like afterwards, so that's very much the type of situation that we're going to look to replicate as much across the region as possible. And once again, our target for this year is to get as many feasibility studies underway as we can so that we can hit the ground running with physical works next year.
That on the left of that top picture is exactly the sort of stupid fence that's been put in to make things worse.
Around increased maintenance and minor physical works, we've got a proactive maintenance and renewals program informed by our flood intelligence work that we'll be doing. And our target for this year is to identify the hotspots for street sweeping and catch pit clearing, and obviously we've got some additional budget this year to put some more resources into that area as part of the additional storm response fund. Then we've got the flood intelligence tool itself, and what we're targeting this year is to identify early warning and monitoring sensor locations and making sure that there's as much public awareness of the flood viewer tool as possible. I actually think that over time we would want this to be the most used site when it comes to predicting floods, both in real time and also giving the community an indication of what's likely to happen after the event as well. In terms of overland flow path management, already been identified as a key risk, and there's one of those recalcitrant fences that His Worship was referring to.
That's a rewrite.
Stupid.
And we want to really raise the community's awareness of this issue, and it's great now to have the support of the new compliance team that's been set up in Regulatory that's working out very, very well. I must say it's early days yet, but it's great to have those people on the ground now that can support us on the Regulatory side with the problems that are being identified by the field operators. Then we have the next program, Community-Led Flood Resilience. And our target this year is to pilot community-led work in priority catchments and get more communication materials out to the public at large. I have to say that we've had a fantastic response from the community and a wonderful response from the local boards across the region in relation to this work. And last but by no means least is the area that we're looking to work on in the rural settlements, supporting rural communities and connecting with vulnerable communities, and marae in particular for needs assessments, because the marae have been a very, very critical part of our response effort, particularly in the rural areas where they've become real community hubs as part of our flood response. And just the last slide is really recognising that this is going to be a huge team effort to deliver this outcome. This isn't by all means all the parties that we're going to be needing to work with, but we've got Healthy Waters, Emergency Management, Eki Panuku, Mana Whenua, the Recovery Office, Designers and Constructors, Kaingora, the Chief Planning Office, Auckland Transport, Matawaka, Regulatory and Compliance, Marae, local boards, community groups, the Crown, Parks and Community Facilities, Ministry for Social Development and Water Care are some of the groups that we're going to have to work with. And the way that we go about that process and really turn the ownership of this program into what I would consider to be community-led ownership, that is the way we're going to get the best bang for our bucks. And so we're really, really keen right at the beginning. We're going to have designers at the table, we're going to have contractors at the table, we're going to have iwi Māori representation at the table, and we want through the local boards to have local community input at the table as well. So everyone feels that they're part of the solution and they can have that buy-in right from the beginning. I think that's the way we're going to get our best outcome and best bang for our buck in this program. And that's pretty much us, and obviously delighted to answer any questions. Kia ora.
Well, the usual suspects are at it again. We'll have Wayne, Councillor Walker, Deputy Mayor Simpson and Councillor Hills.
Okay. So I'll be super quick. $1 billion for 1,000 properties is $1 million per property. So we're throwing a lot of money at a limited number of properties. And the particular concern that I've got across areas in my ward, John's ward, Mairangi Bay, Browns Bay, a number of areas, there's serious flooding that's occurring and will occur on an ongoing basis. And at this point in time, there is nothing proposed. There are initiatives like, mobile flood barriers and the like that we really need to be up with the play on so that these things can go in. So instead of just doing nothing, stuff happens, and I'm talking about building wrapping and the like. And tools need to be developed. So those particular communities have got the LiDAR stuff, they understand the flow paths, they understand the modelling, what happens in a flood event. As it stands now, they're being left to suffer. That's the plan. So I have a real concern that we're throwing megabucks at a limited number of properties. There isn't any targeted rate or anything that's being considered, and that's the sort of stuff I'd like to see in the long-term plan. So I don't know what sort of response you can give me right now, but that's my concern. Obviously, it's got to go through the long-term plan, but I'm really concerned about us covering as much as we can for the money.
Through you, Mr Mayor, back to Councillor Walker, that's exactly the plan for the program. We've got a number of initiatives, so if you look in the detail of the report, I can just give you a little bit more of an indication around the program interview.
Just say yes, I don't want to drag on.
Look, we are committed to working with as many members of the public who have challenges as possible. I can give you an absolute categorical assurance. The money is not only spent in the blue-green areas. We have got very significant budgets across all of those 7 program areas, which is where I believe that we are looking to give the total community as much value for money as we can. Of course, we have to apply a risk prioritisation when it comes to spending money, but we will do our best to support as many of the community as we can with this program. Kia ora.
Thank you. I think Councillor Walker does make a bit of a point. We would like you to just cast your eye over those as possible places for some targeted rate that might well contribute towards this. I mean, there is plenty of evidence in other. I know that Northland Regional Council put targeted rates on at various levels, the direct benefit level and the indirect benefit level. It can be quite, but if you get 100,000 houses and charge them $100, you get a fair bit of money. Yeah. So I'm just asking that management, and you, including you and the Gudsels of the world, give some consideration to that side of it, in much the same way as I've challenged Mace to get some cash back out of that spare land. There is a well-established regime of targeted rating, which has value, and at least it should come back to the governing body for a consideration.
And through you, Mr Mayor, it sends a very important pricing signal. It's critical.
Well, I tend to agree. I think the work you're doing is absolutely excellent and total support of what you're doing, but I'm not at all opposed to introducing targeted rates for those areas. I think that would sell well across those areas, plus particularly well on other ones. But we'll have a debate about that later. But I'm just asking that when you put some future thought into that, I'd like to have that.
We most certainly will, and I'm very confident that through the LTP process we'll look at all of the different options for if we are going to go down a targeted rate approach, what would be the most fair and equitable way to apply that targeted rate across the region. Kia ora.
We might note into this that management will consider possible targeted rate as a tool for reducing or equalising the costs a bit. Do you mind adding that in there, Sanders? Right, we've got more questions, one from the Deputy Mayor and one from Councillor Hills.
No, sorry, Your Worship, I didn't have a question. I was happy to move it or second it, but I'm happy if you and Wayne wanted it.
Rightio, thank you very much for that, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Simpson. Councillor Hills.
First question, thank you. Can you give us not here, but a update of this program and your other program? Because there is you did just do a massive daylighting program in Browns Bay with the Sherwood Park, the Taiotea Creek. You've got Te Ara Awataha. It would be good to show the two. This is what kind of happens sometimes with a targeted rate or a new program. We forget all the great work that's already going on. So it would be good to show our communities the body of work we're doing in this space already, and then this is additional, because I know there's further work to be done in that Browns Bay area and the Northcote area, etc. Could you just give me an idea of how we could show that to the public?
Yeah, no, look, I think that's a great suggestion, Councillor Hills. So we'll certainly look. I think it becomes part of our communication exercises, noting that what we've achieved over the last few years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, on the 12 areas, they're not actually mentioned or highlighted as greatly as before. I assume they're all going forward as the same, like with Wairoa, Milford and other areas that were listed before, just
Correct.
making sure. Okay. And with the list of people you're working with, partners, how do we ensure that also Auckland Transport and others are changing their or moving forward in the way we require new subdivisions to do, the rain gardens, the cutouts of curbs, all quite small costs when you're doing them, you know, at the beginning. How are we ensuring that renewals and all these other types of works, you know, the Mayor's talked about lowering streets, how are we getting those design guides changed quickly so that's not part of this system, but it could be incorporated? It's not going to make much sense if you've got a fantastic greenway, but the road in between is not working functional. How are we rolling that out?
Well, that's why it's so important, and where we've got developments that work around roading networks, that we actually have Auckland Transport at the table, working with our design teams right from the beginning, looking at what those low-hanging fruit might look like. So we have to take a holistic approach to how we go about re-engineering these areas, if you like, in order to deliver some of the outcomes. Because we actually use the roading network in the way that it's intended to be used, we can actually use it to our advantage to actually, actually create some designed overland flow paths to actually be confined to the roading network. So it's just a case of working with the parties and having it. I think the key is getting everyone in the room right from the beginning as we look at each of these specific geographies and looking at all of the opportunities. And there is actually going to be some opportunities for some development opportunities that may produce some returns as part of the project as well, by making some new land available for development that wasn't previously available. So this isn't just a case of spending money. I think there is going to be some potential upside in some of the areas as well. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. Councillor Fletcher.
Just wondering how in all of this, as we progress it, and it's great work, but how are we keeping the real estate industry informed to make them aware of their responsibilities, you know, in terms of disclosures? Because while we go through this transitional period, there's quite a lot of confusion I'm experiencing out there about what is and what isn't of concern. And I think that's an issue that's been raised a few times with me, and I just wonder whether that is a consideration that you've taken into account.
Look, I acknowledge the fact that we do need to work with the real estate industry. I'd have to say that the flood viewer is now getting more and more use, and I think anyone that's looking at buying a home now, the first thing that they're going to do is check the flood viewer for what flood information is on that flood viewer. But I take your point around perhaps needing to engage more proactively with the real estate sector.
I would really appreciate that, because the flood viewer is something that you initiate yourself, whereas I think that there are scrupulous and unscrupulous real estate agents, and they need to be made aware of their obligations in terms of disclosure.
No, appreciate that input, thanks.
Very well said too. I think there are scrupulous and unscrupulous ones. I've met one of the scrupulous ones. I'm going to move this. It's been seconded by Councillor Walker. All those in favour of aye, please say aye. To the contrary, carried. And thank you for an excellent presentation. The next three reports are open process reports for information only, and I'm going to move all three reports. Is there a seconder for that, all three? Yes. Thank you, Councillor Darby. And I don't want anything around. We're going to have no discussion, no staff present, and I'm going to say all those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, carried very much indeed. Now we're going to go into secrecy. Do I have a mover for secrecy? Yes, Councillor Walker, and secrecy comes from Councillor Deputy Mayor. All those want to go to secrecy, please say aye. Okay, we're now in secrecy. Members of the public, thank you for your attendance. But